My name's Alison Orphan. I've lived in Newham for most of my adult life, and the story about Hopeful Futures really is the story about Jono, who is our 24-year-old son. Let me just give you a few words about him. He's a big lad in every way. He's got a really big personality, big laugh. He's big physically. The way he dances is very big, and he does a lot of dancing, particularly to ABBA. In fact, he has, in my view, got a terrible taste in music, but he's very passionate about his music. Lots of ABBA, lots of Barry White, lots of early 70s disco in the main. He's also really, really passionate about art, and he always has been from a very early age. He actually managed to get an art GCSE when he was 16. He wouldn't really be happy unless he was doing art every day, which is what we try to achieve for him. He is also a non-league football supporter. He likes to watch his team, which is Newport County, and he really likes watching sport with other blokes. He also really, really likes people. He's probably the most extrovert member of our family, and he misses people when he doesn't see them. He gets very sad if he hasn't seen a person for a while. He's also severely autistic, and he's got severe learning disabilities, and he is almost entirely non-verbal. However, he does communicate all the time. He just doesn't do it in a very conventional way. So he does lots of pointing at things. He does a little bit of signing. He uses lots of objects, but he certainly knows how to communicate what he wants or needs all the time. In fact, he's a very flamboyant communicator in many ways. And some would say that he has behaviour that challenges. It doesn't necessarily challenge him, but it challenges other people. And he has lots and lots of sensory needs. We live in an area of East London that's very noisy. He struggles with quite a lot of that noise, particularly very sharp noise like ambulances and police sirens and dogs and babies. So sometimes living around here can be quite challenging for him. And actually, truthfully, our story really only starts about 3.5 years ago. Up until then, Jono had a pretty good life, really. He went to school, he loved school, and he loved the routine and the predictability of it a lot. He had lots of things he did after school. He went to trampoline club, he did some art, he watched lots of sport, most emphasis on watched rather than doing. Jono has never been a doer of sport. He's always been a watcher of sport, mostly football. And he saw a lot of family friends, and his life was pretty rich and varied, and he enjoyed life until he left school at 20, and then things got very, very hard for him very quickly. There were a number of things that happened all at once. One of them was that I'd been very ill, so maybe we weren't as focused on what should happen next to him because of that. The place that Jono was supposed to go to, which was going to be a day centre after he left school, closed. And the very short story was that there was no alternative provision offered for Johns. There were lots of things where he couldn't attend them because of his needs, but there was very little that he could actually access at all. And we weren't given a particularly adequate social care budget either, so we didn't have enough money to really pay enough support workers. And the consequence of all of that was that Jono, who'd never really ever been anxious, had this very, very high escalation of anxiety. I'd never actually known Jono to have a panic attack, but he started having panic attacks. He started biting himself, he started gouging his face, and he was just very, very anxious all the time. He did lots and lots of reassurance. Often you had to be reassuring him every couple of minutes during that year after he left school. And then gradually, when nothing was really sort of falling into place for him, that behaviour, the kind of anxiety turned into aggression. He started attacking the people around him. So no, his family particularly, myself, my husband and my daughter, but also any support workers that we had. He was also attacking them, and he was, because he's a big lad, he could be quite violent, and it was really, really starting to escalate. And we were very, very worried about what was going to happen, because we knew that the trajectory for someone like John's is not good. You're very likely to end up either with his level of challenging behaviour at the time, either at the very most, a residential place, very far away from home, perhaps 4 hours away from home, and with no opportunity to ever get out and about, which was, Jono loves to be out and about, or an inpatient unit in a hospital, heavily medicated. Neither of those things was something that we just wanted to contemplate for Jono at all, but there just seems to be very little alternative. And around about that time of kind of, what on earth are we going to do at all, I went to a conference for a thing called Transforming Care, which was a government initiative for people of Jono's, what they call cohort. So it's people who've got learning disabilities and autism. And it was to try and stop them having to do exactly what was just about to happen to John's, have to, be far away from their home and their community. It was trying to keep people within their own communities, and we knew that's what we wanted to do for Jono, because we've always been a very close family, and we've always had really good community networks, so we didn't want that to stop. And when I was at that conference, I discovered a thing called positive behaviour support, which it's kind of like framework for all the good practice that's around about people like John's, and it's about supporting them proactively. And I went away and learned about it very quickly. I mean, it's amazing what desperation does to you. You can sort of learn things really quickly. And I started to think, this is something we could do. But we could run a programme for John's based on this kind of stuff, so that we could give him the life that we felt like he wanted, with all the things in it that we knew made him happy, particularly art, because that was the thing that he loved the most. And so I started to think about it and talk to people about it. And this bit of the story is where it's very difficult for me to not really talk about my Christian faith, because I have no idea, this bit of the story, how we got the money, how we managed to persuade the local authority to fund Jono's programme. I don't know. It just feels like we got a lot of people to pray, and it happened, but it was a remarkable thing. And we also got quite a lot of support from the local health team as well, but we started to run a programme for Jono, using what we knew made him happy, but also what we knew would progress him as well. So we knew that he'd need predictability, and he'd need structure. He'd also need a quiet environment, because life around here was too noisy. We were very fortunate that friends of ours offered us their church, because they weren't using it during the week, and so we based Johnny's programme at a church. We managed to be able to pay and train a team of support workers, and so the little micro-enterprise around Jono began. And somewhere along that journey, that microenterprise became Hopeful Futures. And that's how it started. But obviously it's grown a lot since those days 3.5 years ago. What we've started to realise, and we've really done it through a group of us now coming together who've got the same passion for people with learning disabilities and autism, is that what we were able to achieve for Jono is achievable for others, and they need the same opportunities that he is now getting. So that was the beginnings of Hopeful Futures, the vision for Hopeful Futures. One of the things that when it was just me and my husband, it's now a lot of other people as well, but when we started Hopeful Futures, one of the things that we were very passionate about was having high expectations of Jono. We didn't want Jono to just be, oh, poor little Jono. And apart from the fact he's not very little, he's equally not very poor, and in many ways quite formidable, really. So I think this whole sort of feeling sorry for Johns or people like him is completely ridiculous. They need to be given the space to achieve and do what they've been put on this earth to do, which in Jono's case is art, and find ways of making that happen. Find ways of discovering first what makes people fly, the thing that they love, and then how do you make that happen for them. And so the journey with Hopeful Futures has been now that we've done that for Jono, is to think about how do you do that for other people with learning disabilities and autism. And we're now looking at a variety of different ways of doing that. So we're hoping to run community groups, and those community groups would be lots and lots of different art-based activities that suit different people. One thing won't suit one there'll be lots of choice involved, but we want those groups to be areas of excellence. We want people to not just come along and just do anything. We want it to be really good quality, because what we'd like is the possibility, the audacious possibility, that people could actually eventually earn a living through doing some of those things. Be that art, be that gardening, be that cooking, whatever it happens to be, we'd like to develop that into work for people, because work actually in our society is what gives people meaning and purpose. So we really want to make that happen. So that is a very, very key part of what we want to achieve. And as a result of that, the other bit that's happened on our journey with Hopeful Futures is we always want to be a supportive employer. So we want to actively recruit people who've got conditions themselves, be that autism, be that mental health, or physical conditions. We actively want to recruit people who may be struggling in the job market. I always find it incredible to discover that there's only 15% of autistic people with normal intelligence hold down a full-time job. I just kind of think that's ridiculous. I also think it's waste, a complete waste. So we are very into supporting people into working for us in whatever way that might look. And that's a really, really key part of what we're doing. We also, and this is fundamental, I think, because it's been so fundamental in Jono's journey, we want to be in the business of creating an inclusive community, because in the main part, and this has been exacerbated through the lockdown and all the stuff we've had to go through with COVID, the main issue for people with autism and learning disabilities, and also families who care for somebody with autism and learning disabilities, very, very often the key issue for them is social isolation. And we want to do something about combating social isolation. So however community looks, and goodness knows we want to be very creative about it, we want to be in the business of building that community. That might be groups, it might be online Zoom groups, It could be lots of different things, but we want to be in the business of looking at social isolation. And with that in mind, one of the very first things that we'll be doing is a thing called WAVE, which is a service, a worship service, a Christian worship service, inclusive for people with learning disabilities. And we want part of what we're about to be a worshipping community, and that will be something we'll offer. And obviously, Hopeful Futures is always going to be open to anybody, whether you have a faith or you don't. But it's a really important part of our identity that we provide that for anybody who would want to be accessing it. We think it's a really heartfelt need within our local community, and we want to offer that. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing. And we think we'll probably have quite a lot of fun doing it, to be honest. One of the learning things around the journey with Jono has been the absolutely vital bit about being thorough and being excellent in everything we do. We are not going to cut corners. People like Jono need time to get it right, and they need time for you to be really, really thorough and robust. If you really want this to work, the detail matters. So we're passionately engaged in getting all the details right, which means we need to do a lot of listening, actually. You can't go in with an attitude of kind of, oh, we know what we're talking about, we're the experts. You have to go in with an attitude of really listening to the people that you want to support and help. And we also want to really work in partnership with people, and that's families, that's other organisations. We're not really expecting to do this on our own. It's all about working together to make something better for lots and lots of people. The other thing I think is that you need to get the ordinary things right. I think kindness is an underrated virtue. I think the way that we treat people one-to-one really matters. Relationships are vital to people with learning disabilities and autism because they don't have as many. And I think we should never move away from getting the ordinary things right. We have to get the ordinary things right, because that's what actually, someone like Jono, it matters to Jono how somebody is with him every day. And he notices the detail, so we have to. That really, really matters. And we want to be a very relational organisation, because that's what's needed out here. That's it.